So the first thing you have to decide as an IMG studying for Step 1 is which resources you're going to use. In today's video, I'm going to discuss the 4 resources that I recommend you use as an IMG studying for Step 1, and the ones that I'm personally going to be using for my test this coming January. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Chris, I'm a 5th year international medical student, and right now, just before my 5th year of medical school, I'm starting to study for my Usmle Step 1 exam. Well actually, this is my 2nd time studying for this test, and by this point I feel pretty confident in the resources that I've chosen to use. I'm making this video because, as an IMG, I know it's incredibly difficult to get reliable information about what resources you should use to prepare for Step 1, especially considering you don't have much support from faculty or other medical students also studying for Step 1. So I'm making this video to hopefully help out any other IMGs out there that were in the same position that I was in when I started. So I feel pretty confident that the resources I've chosen are enough to get you the grade on Step 1, but if you guys feel like I've missed any important resources or you have any tips, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. I'd really like to create a community of IMGs all preparing for this exam and helping each other out together. Alright, so the first things first, you have to know roughly when you think you're going to take the exam, because it's going to take longer than you might think to prepare. It takes the average student 6 to 9 months to prepare for this exam, and sometimes even up to a year. So it's really important to think in advance when the best time is for you to take the exam and then count back from there. Unlike American medical schools, we don't get dedicated time off to study for this test, so it's really important you think about this in advance. You'll probably have to carve out an hour here or an hour there throughout your regular study routine in order to make up for the time that you would have gotten in dedicated study. Please try not to get worried if you see people posting their 3-month study plan or their 2-month study plan online, usually on forums like Reddit. There's often a lot of important context that is left out of those study plan write-ups, like how much base knowledge they had before they started studying. I think reading other people's study plans is useful to a certain extent, but once you pick a plan, it's really important to just stick to that plan. Alright, so the resources. Like I said previously, I'm only going to recommend 4 main resources for you to study. So the resources are Anki flashcards, the Pathoma video lecture series and the added textbook, Sketchy Micro and Sketchy Farm, and some kind of question bank. I personally recommend Uworld. So you may be thinking that, wow, 4 resources, that's not enough to cover all the material for Step 1. Well, I personally believe that if you master these 4 resources and supplement with other resources that I'm also going to mention, you'll be more than prepared to succeed on Step 1. Alright, so now I'm going to break down how I use each of these resources individually and why I found them so helpful. Alright, so the first resource is Anki flashcards. Now fundamentally, Anki is just a flashcard app, but what makes it so powerful for Usmle studying is the introduction of active recall and spaced repetition into your studying. So you'll want to download one of the pre-made decks from the medical school Anki subreddit. Those guys are saints. There are plenty of decks on there that were curated by medical students over time and created by the community. The original deck to download back in the day was Anki, but I recommend for newcomers nowadays to just get the Anki deck. I'm going to link that in the description. So it's the most comprehensive deck out there. It includes flashcards from First Aid, Uworld, Pathoma, Sketchy, everything you need. And the creator of the deck updates it pretty often with the mistakes. You should also check out the Anki YouTube channel for really good tutorials on how to set up Anki. I can also make a super basic tutorial on how I have Anki set up and the settings I use. So if you guys are interested in that, maybe leave a comment down below. Now the gunners among you are probably wondering when I'm going to recommend First Aid, but guess what? I'm not. For those of you that don't know, First Aid for the longest time has been the Bible for medical students. They took it everywhere with them. They ate with it, they slept with it under their pillow, they showered with it to try and osmose some of the information. I don't know. People would read through First Aid once or maybe multiple times, and they would annotate in the margins and make notes. And anything they learned from other resources like Pathoma or Uworld or any practice questions, they would annotate that into First Aid in different colors. And this was generally a good way of organizing things because it got everything in one place. But the reason why I don't recommend this nowadays is because highlighting and rereading is one of the worst ways to study. If you're going to use Anki, like I recommend, the Anki deck already has First Aid transcribed word for word in flashcard format. So not only do you get the benefits of spaced repetition and active recall, which we already know are the most effective ways to study, but now you have an entirely searchable encyclopedia of all your medical knowledge and First Aid and Pathoma and everything in your pocket. You know, I still use Anki to this day on the wards. If I forget a random drug or a pathology, I just whip out Anki on my phone and I quickly search it up. It works offline, it's super fast, and it's really convenient. Pathoma is in the name, path meaning pathology and oma meaning mass, so it's a mass of pathology knowledge. Honestly, I can't say enough amazing things about Dr. Sattar and the amazing resource he's created. Pathoma is a video lecture series, and it comes with an additional, deceptively small textbook. And the idea is you will watch the video lectures and annotate in the margins. Now, I said before about mastering your resources. Pathoma, you have to master, double master, and then triple master. It really is that high yield. What I really love about Dr. Sattar's video lectures is his focus on concepts and ideas rather than memorization. He'll also tell you when a concept is particularly high yield for the test, so that means it comes up more often than other topics. I would pay particular attention to Pathoma chapters 1 through 3. The general pathology section of Pathoma is particularly high yield. Now, I know I said before that I don't like annotating in the margins, but I think Pathoma is an exception. I think it's not really a waste of time to annotate the margins in Pathoma because of the categorization of the information. So watch the video lectures, annotate the book as you go, and unsuspend the cards in Anki when you're finished, and then move on. Alright, so the next resource is Sketchy. The bane of most students' existence is microbiology and pharmacology, and Sketchy is here to save the day. Let me tell you, in the beginning, I was reading through large blocks of text of pharmacology with all these random names, and I couldn't memorize anything. Sketchy changes things up by utilizing a technique called the memory palace. So Sketchy turns every drug and every microorganism into a picture or a sketch, and each sketch along with it has a narrative and story. Each individual part of that sketch represents a piece of information that you need to know about the drug or the microorganism. This is opposed to the traditional way of studying micro and pharm, which is to read textbooks full of information. So, for example, when I think of linezolid, I think police line, which brings me to this sketch. This picture alone, I can tell you, gives me loads of information. These broken plates will symbolize thrombocytopenia. These blue-purple circles tell me that it's a gram-positive cocci. Whenever I recommend Sketchy to people, a lot of them say, I tried it, but it just didn't work for me. And I have to say I get it. Personally, in the beginning, it was very random to me to listen to these weird narratives and stories about these drugs, but I'm really glad I stuck with Sketchy Pharm because it turned my weakest subject into one of my strongest subjects. So I won't tell you you have to use Sketchy to study for step 1, but it made my studying 1,000 times easier and even quite fun. You're essentially watching cartoons to study for micro and pharm. So what I'll do is I'll watch the Sketchy video from beginning to end, and I'll pause just before the summary at the end of the video, and I'll try and read out loud all of the things in the sketch that I can recognize, and then I'll unpause the video and listen to the summary they've given. And then obviously you unsuspend the cards in Anki and do them. I'll also mention that Sketchy recently launched Sketchy Pathology, but not many people I know use that, and I can't really vouch for it because I haven't used it. Personally, I think that there are many other better resources to study pathology. Alright, so the next kind of resource you're going to need is some kind of question bank. So if there's something you remember from this video, it's that you have to start a question bank as soon as possible. I remember people told me that 2 years out from my step 1 exam, but many people, including myself, procrastinated on doing questions in the beginning because you think, well, I don't really know any of the material, so I'm probably going to be wasting questions. So let me dispel that rumor right here, right now. There's no such thing as a wasted question. There's something to learn from every single question. I personally recommend that you do questions on a topic you've studied or are studying right now, so you have some chance of answering it. But if you come across a question and you have absolutely no idea of how to answer it because you haven't studied the material, this is an opportunity for you to practice your critical reasoning skills. I'm going to leave a fantastic video in description by MVP Medical Review on question logic and how to answer questions that you have absolutely no idea how to answer. So give that a watch. It's 44 minutes, but I promise you it will change your life. So for this exam, it's not simply enough to just know the material back to front. You have to practice applying that material as early as possible. You need to get used to answering questions in the style and format of the Usmle exam, and you have to get used to the timing of those questions so you can speed up over time. Doing practice questions is also another way of incorporating my favorite technique, active recall, into your studying plan, as opposed to just rereading first aid once, twice, 3 times over. So just start off by doing 10 questions a day and then graduate it up over time, and then before your test, do 40 question blocks. You can start off in non-timed mode if you want, but I recommend timed mode just so you get used to answering questions quickly. I don't recommend tutor mode at all. I personally think it's distracting, takes longer because as soon as you answer a question, you have to review the question, and it just disrupts the flow of you answering questions. I think you're better off answering all the questions in a block and then analyzing them all at the end. So after you've finished doing the practice questions, you have to review the answers. And arguably, this is more important than even finding out which ones you got right or wrong. You should be spending double the amount of time reviewing your answers that you did actually doing the questions. So you need to spend the least amount of time on questions you got right for the right reason, and you should be focusing on questions you got wrong or questions you got right for the wrong reason. So the idea here is to focus on correcting the line of reasoning that led you to the wrong answer. And you want to make flashcards on that line of reasoning so you don't get it wrong in the future. Obviously, it's also possible you just haven't studied the topic yet. In that case, I would make a note of the topic so you study it later, but also try and find out how you could have got the right answer based on information they gave you in the question stem. So if you're early enough in your studies, like 2 years out, I recommend getting Usmle RX. It's an easier question bank and it correlates nicely to first aid, so you can read up and learn as you go along. But if you're about a year out from your exam, I recommend just starting Uworld. I don't agree with these people who tell you that you should save Uworld for the 3 months before your exam. I did that the first time I studied and I only end up finishing about half of Uworld, which was really bad. So there's like 3,000 or 4,000 questions and they're continually adding questions over time. Honestly, it's personal preference, but I would rather finish my QBank early and have to pick up another QBank than finish my QBank late and have done less practice questions. Uworld is best used as a learning resource, not as an assessment tool 3 months before your exam. Alright, now for additional resources that might aid in your studying. So a lot of people swear by Boards and Beyond, and honestly, I found that Dr. Ryan is fantastic at explaining some topics like cardiology and oncology, but in other topics I found that it feels like he's reading from a textbook and not really explaining why things are the way they are. I personally used Boards and Beyond as like a backup dictionary. If there was something that I was really struggling to understand, I would look it up in Boards and Beyond and see if there was a video lecture, maybe I would watch the chapter. Or if I was feeling lazy and I didn't want to open Anki and do flashcards, I would watch Boards and Beyond videos. Osmosis is another very useful resource. Same as Boards and Beyond, I'd use it to supplement your other resources by looking up things that you can't really understand. And finally, I would recommend that you go through all of the Dirty Usmle YouTube channel videos. His videos are very short, they're extremely high yield. Save them all for the month before the test and just go through them back to back to back to back. He has several good videos. One is about high yield images for the test. Another one is about biohacks for test day. I recommend you just watch all of them because they're pretty short and they're all really high yield. All right, so that should be everything. Those you guys can probably imagine, these resources are going to keep me occupied for a pretty long time. I'm hoping to take the test in January, but we shall see if that works out. Like and subscribe for more videos about my IMG journey. I hope I was able to help someone out there with my ramblings. I know that for myself, things were very confusing when I started, so I really just like to be able to help someone else out there. If you liked this video, I made a video last week about the US clinical experience, which is a pretty important part of your residency application, so maybe give that a watch if that's something that interests you. Happy studying. I'll see you all in the future videos.